You alone know how these remaining minutes need to be used and what words need to be heard. Speak in spite of me. May we see your Son, Jesus. In His name, amen. I'd like to ask that you. Topic for today is another kind of baptism. In Christianity today, there are numerous kinds of baptisms, different kinds of ways to do it, whether it's immersion or sprinkling or rose petal or with the certain names said or different names said, on and on and on. But today I'd like to talk to you about another kind of baptism that most Christians aren't aware of. And it's a baptism that is filled with a kind of power and transformation, and I want you to see it. John 13, verse 1. Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that His hour was come, that He should depart out of this world unto the Father. In verse 1, what awareness does Jesus have? What awareness does He have? That His hour is coming, and what's associated with that? What additional awarenesses does He have with the fact of saying, my hour is come, or that His hour is about to come? What is He aware of that is about to happen? What's that? He'll be separated from the rest of the disciples. He's going to die. He's going to be hung up on a Roman cross. In fact, it's one Thursday evening long ago, He's in an upper room with 12 of His followers. Oil lamps are flickering. You can smell the food as it's being served on the little table in the center of them. And Jesus knows that He is literally taking footsteps towards His doom. And what awareness does He have? He knows where He's going. Now, friends, if I knew that on my way home from church today on Sunny Slope there would be a horrible accident and I would lose my life, friends, I'd take Fairview home, wouldn't I? Jesus knew where He was going. Again and again and again, the Bible tells us that He knew He was going to Jerusalem to die. He said, I'm going to go, I'm going to be killed, I'm going to be scourged, I'll be crucified. And still He did it. In that upper room long ago, John leaves out the backstory. The backstory is that the disciples were bickering among themselves as to who should be the greatest. You remember that. And they come into the upper room and they're seated on their various couches around the little table filled with food, but they're waiting. And they're not all seated like you see in this picture where they're up like this. They're actually, if this is a table here where all the food is, they're actually laying about like this on couches, and they will reach over and they will eat the food, and they'll be able to see the person in front of them but not in back of them. They will be like spokes in a wheel around the central hub of the banquet. They are there, but a hush has fallen over them because they have been waiting for the servant to come in and wash everybody's feet. But in the providence of God, nobody has made arrangements for that servant. And instinctively they know that the task has to fall on one of them, but what have they been arguing about just moments before? And each one of them to a man, I can hear them say, oh, I know I should do. No. I'm going to have a high position of honor in Christ's kingdom, and there's no way that I will perform the duty of a servant. That's beneath me. Again and again and again, and as it goes all the way around from John all the way to Judas, nobody wants to take that. And then I want you to see what happens next. John 13, verse number 4. This is, as John writes verse 4 and 5, he uses 7 action verbs. 3 of those are in the dramatic, historical present. He is conveying a sense of drama. Notice what it says. Jesus, he rises from supper, laid aside his garments, took a towel, and girded himself. And he poureth water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel wherewith he was girded. I want you to be there in that upper room long ago. It is silent. The tension is thick. You can almost cut it with a knife. And all of a sudden everybody watches as John says, Jesus rises. Dramatic. He takes the mantle and he pulls it off of his shoulders and puts it on a chair or a stand. And each of the disciples, their minds are thinking, you got to be kidding. No way. He's not going to do this. He begins to walk towards that basin of water in the corner, tucking his tunic into his belt, gets to the basin, reaches that towel there, that's the linen, the long piece of linen, throws it around his waist, loops it, knots it, and now he's ready to perform the act of a servant. Each of the disciples is thinking, you got to be kidding. Not him. He grabs the pitcher in great ceremony, and friends, as John is seeing this as a teenager, he's probably actually about 20 by this time. Everything is drama because Jesus takes, and you can hear the sound of water cascading into that basin, and then the clunk of the basin on the stone stand. Jesus picks up the basin and he walks over to where the disciples are, and he kneels down before the first disciple and begins to wash feet. High drama. And I love the picture by Paul Remy. I don't even know much about this guy, but you know what he captures? The disciples are in shock, flabbergasted, blown away, beside themselves, horrified that Jesus would wash feet. And do you know why? To understand the meaning of this, you have to know with what feet were associated. When you go back in Scripture, again and again, you will see that feet are associated with subjugation and humility. In fact, at the very last quote here, Paul says that Jesus must reign till he has put all his enemies under his feet. You can see that. And he was using, and you would think, enemies under their feet, that's just a metaphor, wasn't it? No, it wasn't. I want you to look with me. This is an Assyrian wall relief, probably from the Nineveh Palace in Ashurnazarpal. Notice, I don't know if you can see this, there's a figure, and he's stepping on something down below him. And if you look a little closer, you will see that he's actually stepping on the neck of an enemy. This is what is called, you see, this was the final act in a formal military ceremony called the subjugation ceremony, in which the fallen king, the conquered king, would be forced down to the ground, and the conqueror would place his foot on that man's neck. The idea wasn't to kill him in that position. No, the idea was to demonstrate. I mean, if you're down on the ground and you have a big man's foot on your neck, how much moving are you going to be doing? You are in a position of surrender, a position of weakness. And this was the message that was conveyed. You have no power, your army is gone, you are conquered. I am the victor. And indeed, feet became associated with subjugation and humility. Have you ever read Joshua 10? When Joshua hears that 5 Canaanite kings are coming up to attack one of their allies by the name of Gibeon. You see, these 5 kings are so worried because Jericho has fallen, Ai has fallen, and Gibeon has capitulated and formed a treaty with the enemy. They are going to annihilate Gibeon. They surround Gibeon. Gibeon cries out for help, saying, Joshua, we have a treaty. What are you going to do? Joshua goes to God, and God says, don't worry, I've got it all under control. And Joshua goes out and fights. The enemy is defeated, and those 5 invading kings are holed up in a cave somewhere. You read it, Joshua 10, and we're going to look at Joshua 10:24, because he goes to that cave at the end of the battle, and each of those kings is brought out. And do you know what he asked his men to do? I'll read it for you. You can see it on the screen. He calls for the captains and men of war. And he says, come near, put your feet upon the necks of these kings. Fear not, be not dismayed, be strong and of good courage, for thus shall the Lord God do to all your enemies against whom you fight. You see, feet were associated with humility and subjection. And indeed, in the Bible times, when somebody came and fell down at the feet of somebody else, what did that mean? You know, this is a nice picture, but I don't think this fully accurately describes it. When Mary came and fell at the feet of Jesus, it was more like this. At the feet. And it said, I am nothing. You are everything. You are my Lord. You are the Almighty. I am worthless. And I am so grateful for your kindness. And so it is, when Jesus comes to the disciples, they are horrified. Because you know what message Jesus is sending them? I admire you. I respect you. You are in a position of power. I am your servant. I will do as you wish. And when Jesus gets around to Peter, Peter finds his voice, and in chapter 13:6, he comes to Simon Peter, and Peter said unto him, Lord, do you wash my feet? Every single verb there stands alone. It's emphatic. Lord! You're my Lord. You wash. Wash? My feet? He's incredulous. Jesus said, what I do, you do not know now, but you shall know hereafter. And Peter, with his flair for the dramatic, flings back the words, you shall never wash my feet. And Jesus said, well, in that case, Peter, then you will have no part with me. That rattles Peter. He doesn't want Jesus to be a servant to him, not to him. He is the servant. Jesus is the master. That cannot happen for Jesus to be his servant. He cannot do that. But to have no part with Jesus? And Peter says, well, verse number 9, Peter said unto him, well then, in that case, Lord, everything changes. Don't just wash my feet. Wash all my hands and my head. And I want you to see how Jesus responds to this. Because hidden in Jesus' response is a deep truth about another kind of baptism. When Jesus says, you have no part with me, and Peter says, wash all of me, my hands and my head, Jesus said to him, up until now, the word for wash is nipto. It means a cursory washing, like a sponge bath. But Jesus here in this verse changes the word washed, and you'll see wash in King James, but in your current versions you'll see the word bathed. Jesus said to him, wait a second, you want your hands and your head washed as well? He who is what? Bathed needs only to wash his feet and is completely clean. The word wash and bathe are completely different words. This is nipto, this is luo. This word here means to take a bath. Literally, Jesus is saying, if you've taken a bath, Peter, all you need to do is wash your feet. Why was that? Do you know why that was? You see, most of his hearers did not have indoor plumbing. They did not have a shower or a bathtub. They had to go to a public mikveh or a public pool like the Pool of Siloam or Bethesda to wash. And there were ways to do that so you could wash up with maybe not removing all your clothes or being semi-private if you were in a mikveh. And we won't get into that. And there was in-home plumbing for the very rich, but that was fairly rare. So what would happen is you would go to the public pool and you would take a bath and you would get all cleaned up and now you're wonderful. And what would you put on your feet as you headed back home? And what would happen to your feet as you would walk down those streets and down those dirt paths? You know what would happen. There's dust everywhere. They didn't have pavement and concrete all over like we do today. When they walked, they got their feet dirty. And when they got home, before they got in bed, you know what they did? They washed their feet. And in ancient times, that's what they did. They didn't take a shower and bath every morning or every evening, however often we do it. They did that maybe once a week, and then they would wash their feet and just keep their feet, and then they could slip into bed, and they were fine. Peter gets it. Do you know what Jesus is saying to Peter? Do you know what message he's sending to us as his followers? Jesus is not saying, oh, Peter, you already took a bath today, so you don't need to wash your whole body. Physically, you just need to wash your feet. Jesus isn't just concerned about physical cleanliness, is he? Jesus is saying, Peter, you were baptized. You were completely bathed when you were immersed by John the Baptist under the water. You were completely clean. You don't need to go through that baptism all over again. A number of people have come to me periodically and said, I need to be baptized. I want to be baptized. And I've said, well, have you been baptized? Yes, I was baptized by immersion once or twice, 3 times. And I usually challenge them, well, so why now? And this doesn't negate the need for rebaptism on some occasions. But in general, we don't need to just keep getting rebaptized every time we fall. Some of us would be having weekly baptisms. But the beauty of it is that Jesus made provision, and he said, look, you are to be baptized by immersion, but there's a part of you that comes into contact with the world, with the earth, with earthly things, and you will be contaminated. Most of you will be clean, but you know what? You need to come and have me wash your feet again and again and again and again, so that your baptism, it's a mini rebaptism, if you will, so you will be cleansed again. And this is why we as Seventh-day Adventists celebrate not just the emblems of Christ's death, but also we follow his instruction to wash each other's feet. Because there are 3 lessons that come to us from this. First of all, Jesus knows that our feet will get dirty. Friends, if that doesn't encourage you, nothing will. Ever heard of Constantine? You have heard that as he becomes a Christian, he marches his entire army through the river Tiber Tiber and baptizes them and turning them into Christians, and he's baptized at that moment. That's what you've heard. What you may not know was that Constantine the Great's actual baptism took place in 337 AD, 25 years later, a quarter of a century later. And he knew about baptism. He wanted to be baptized. If he wanted to be baptized in the Jordan River, that never happened, but he wanted to be baptized. But why did he wait until just months before his death to become baptized? Do you know why? Because he had the misconception that, you know what? Once I'm baptized, I'm perfect. And I don't want to blow it and lose my chance of eternal life. So I'm going to wait until I'm old and decrepit, and then I'm baptized, and I'm old and decrepit, and I will have no passions, and I won't sin, and I'll be okay. And I'll go right into the kingdom. Away with that kind of thinking. Jesus knows that our feet will get dirty. And he knows also that we must come to him for cleansing. And friends, we must, because he says, unless you do this, you have no part with me. We must go to him for repeated cleansing. And friends, I don't know about you, but I need this cleansing. And in the ceremony that follows the foot washing, it is just a symbol of allowing Jesus again, as we come to him in surrender, in service, washing somebody else's feet, having them wash our own feet. It's a symbol of allowing him to cleanse our hearts again, because we need it again and again and again and again. And Jesus instructed his disciples, if I then, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. What we do here is we celebrate an open communion. We allow anyone to participate who wishes to. We first start with a foot washing. We will have a break here where the men go to the junior room, the women to the fellowship hall.